What is your biggest financial concern? Are you being as intentional with your finances as you could be? How confident are you that you'll reach your financial goals? How will life's transitions impact your financial plan? Welcome to the Clarity and Confidence for Life podcast with Tom Fleishel, founder, president, and CEO of Fleishel Financial Associates. Discover how we can help business owners, successful families, and corporate executives achieve clarity and confidence for life while providing tailored financial solutions that eliminate complexity and free you up to focus on what really matters in life to you and your family. Now, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to the Clarity and Confidence for Life podcast with your host, Tom Fleishel. I'm RJ Malik, producer of this podcast. Tom, how are you doing today?
It's Friday. I'm great. Thank you.
Okay, that's good. Fridays are great. So today we're going to talk about the top 10 retirement planning mistakes. Are there only 10 or are these the most common mistakes?
There's lots of mistakes, but I just kind of narrowed it down to the top 10 that I thought would be most impactful for people, our listeners, to hear. So yeah, we definitely could probably come up with other ones, but I think these are great.
Okay, so these are the ones that you have found through your career are most sort of the most common mistakes that people make.
Most common and the most serious that they need to avoid.
Okay, all right, then let's start off with number 10.
Number 10 is not considering longevity. So when you plan for retirement, you really need to think about some assumptions about how long this money has to last in retirement. You don't want to plan on living to only, well, my family only lived to 83, my dad, my mom, so I'm only going to make it to 85. And then you live to 92. So you definitely have to plan on the long side because you don't want the last check to bounce before you kick the bucket. So we definitely need to be thinking a little bit longer term for folks. If you're 60 years old and you retire now and you're in good health, this money may need to last for 30 more years.
Yeah.
So, that's going to be very, very important that you think about the longevity factor.
I can definitely relate to that. My dad, who passed away a couple of years ago, in his family, longevity was not something that was prevalent. And I don't think he prepared properly because he lived to 87 and his dad and some of his relatives didn't make it out of their 60s. So his attitude was always, well, I'm not going to live that long. And, now he's gone and my mom is left and my brothers and sister, we have to watch very carefully her budget because it's tight. It's a very tight budget. And it's something that, we didn't think about. I mean, that was not something I didn't talk to my dad about that. He handled his finances and it was basically none of my business. So
Yeah.
It's a tough spot.
It is. And unfortunately, it's a conversation that we need to have with our parents and sit down and say, Mom and Dad, here's something we need to really get serious about. I know, you're the boss, you're my parents, but we want to make sure that you're taken care of and the money that you've saved for is going to last for the rest of your lives. So let's have a conversation and try to at least open that up and make sure that there's some open dialogue about all these issues. I really think that's important. We try to stress that with our clients.
Having those conversations. Yeah, that's a tough one. I know from my personal experience, broaching that topic would not have been an easy one for me and my dad. It would not have gone smoothly. And
that's pretty typical, that's for sure.
He's the parent. I'm the son, and it's what do I know type of thing. Yeah, I mean it's great advice. I wish I had that advice 25 years ago and thinking about it, because now we're in a position, not only myself, but my wife is sort of in the same position with her mom. She's paying for her stay in a facility, and that's money that's not going to our retirement. So, but we have no choice.
Got to take care of Mom. Yep.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a great lady. They had a great relationship before the health issues. So you have no choice. You have to do what you have to do to take care of your parents. But that's something that is not talked about anywhere.
Not too much. So again, that's what in my upcoming book, this is really on, or at least right now, it's on Amazon, Clarity and Confidence for Life, Living Your Financial Life by Design, Not by Default. We really try to sit down and talk to clients about all these things and even try to engage the conversation with the next generation to bring them into the loop and have these talks. Thankfully, in our situation, my wife's mom, her dad had saved well, and they have assets. And so she's in a memory care unit with advanced dementia. But thankfully, there's assets there to help keep that funded. We don't know how long she's going to live. She's still in pretty good health, just turned 83. So
Right.
we'll see. We'll hope it lasts.
Yeah.
We just don't know.
Okay. All right.
So,
We probably could talk about this for a while, but let's move on to number 9, overlooking
number
taxes.
overlooking taxes. Well, we have to understand the tax implications of our retirement income. So most people, their retirement savings is going to be in pre-tax earnings like 401ks, IRAs, that sort of thing. So thankfully, not until 73 now are you required to take what we call a required minimum distribution, which is a calculation that they make each year that is changing based on the size of your IRA account, and your age is a factor. But you don't have to take anything out of it until you do. But whenever you do, it'll all be taxable typically because it was pre-tax income. So that's an important thing to consider. There's going to be, if you have another portfolio that's after tax, you've got to look into and make sure you're planning for dividends, capital gains, interest income, that's all taxable. And also, people may not realize that based on certain income levels, even your Social Security income can be taxed. So all those things are very important. You might also have rental income. You might have a pension if you're fortunate enough. All those need to be factored into your taxable income. Now, there's also some lurking potential dangers that are out there that the current administration is proposing that they may be running to raise long-term capital gain taxes, the maximum rate from 20% to 37%. Lord help us if that happens, because there's going to be a lot of problems with our economy. So we hope that doesn't occur. Those kind of things that's the other dangers. We don't know what tax laws are going to change in the future. So we always have to be carefully watching that, have good tax advice, get with your tax professional, and make sure you're addressing those issues.
So as you're getting closer to retirement, you really should sit down with your financial advisor and really focus in on where you're at with your finances, and then tax applications to it, because what you just said to me is not something I'm thinking about.
Yeah, it's a whole deal. First off, how much income can I afford to take out of my portfolio to supplement Social Security, whatever other assets that I might have that I can generate income from. But all those have tax implications. So that has to be carefully addressed and looked at together with your advisor, your tax professional. So all those things are definitely important. We've got to look into it.
As you get closer to retirement, in your opinion, do you think it's good to sit down with your financial advisor more than once a year, maybe 3 or 4 times a year, once a quarter or something like that?
Well,
And go over these types of
well, sure,
topics?
sure. You definitely, as you get close and decide on, what's your income strategy, where's it going to come from, what are the tax implications? So it may not be dependent on the person and the situation. A couple times a year as you get closer probably is sufficient, but sometimes people need more hand holding or looking at things more closely. But yeah, it's important to really dig in, crunch the numbers, make sure everybody's good with what the plan is.
Okay. All right. I'm going to do my very poor Casey Kasem imitation as we continue on with the countdown. We're up to number 8. Not
Very
good.
good. Number 8, being overly conservative with your investments. So it is essential to protect your assets, but sometimes being too conservative, you may not yield enough return to sustain the retirement lifestyle. So in saving for retirement, you want to make sure you're getting a reasonable rate of return to offset inflation. So right now we know it's about 3.5. And during retirement, most people we suggest are not going to be taking out more than about 4% of their portfolio to have a sustainable distribution rate, we call it. So if you're taking out 4% and inflation's 3.5, you'll need to earn at least 5 to 7 or more on your investments, on your total return, the income plus the growth, in order to make sure that you're keeping up with inflation over time. Because as we know, it eats away and erodes our buying power. Just think what it cost 5 years ago for a dozen eggs, for a loaf of bread, for a gallon of gas. Things change. It gets more expensive. So we definitely need to make sure that if you're drawing income off of assets, which hopefully most people are, to supplement other things, you've got the growth of your assets to keep up with that so that you can raise your income level each year to some degree.
So again, multiple visits with your financial advisor is recommended because inflation changes.
Inflation changes somewhat. It doesn't change dramatically. Now, it did in 2023. 2022, it was very dramatic, and that's what caused so much havoc on the bond market because interest rates went through the roof. So it's something that we have to really pay attention to, yes, and be flexible to adjust your strategy based on all that's happening in the marketplace.
Okay. All right, let's move on to number 7 on our countdown here as far as common retirement planning mistakes.
So prioritization of your kids before retirement savings. So be careful because everybody loves their kids, but we've seen situations where the parents used up major portions of their life savings to do things like pay cash for a house, covering over 200,000 wedding, for example. And that really dramatically impacted their own retirement security. We had one situation where the son-in-law took over the family business that the parents were relying on for their future retirement income, and he promptly ran it into the ground.
Wow.
Unless there's some medical or mental illness issue, they need to take on their own affairs and be responsible for their own future. And I don't know why a lot of parents think that it's their responsibility to help adult kids financially that are pretty much able to move on. And yes, they might have had a divorce. They might have had to go through a difficult thing. I understand there's unique circumstances where that's warranted, but I've seen it too many times where it probably was not a wise thing and it did impact their potential for their future retirement.
Parents can't help being parents no matter how old their kids are. I've seen that a lot or many times myself. The parents are very much involved and you're looking at the kid going, yeah, but you're 40 years old. What are you doing?
Right.
All right, Tom, we're going to continue the countdown of common retirement planning mistakes. We're up to number 6.
Number 6 is just relying solely on Social Security, which Social Security was meant to be really just a floor protection and for people that have really never planned at all. So hopefully that's not anyone that's listening to this podcast. But for 2024, the average monthly Social Security check is only about $1,760 a month, just a little over $21,000 a year. And that's poverty level income. So, it was never really meant to be something that you're going to rely completely on. So it wouldn't even be close to covering all your expenses. Don't let that be your only option. We have to plan with personal savings. If you're fortunate enough to have a pension, that's great, but most people don't have that anymore. So we pretty much only have the two-legged retirement stool of Social Security and personal savings. So I like to say, if it's going to be, it's up to me. So we better get serious and get started. I love Jeff Foxworthy, the country joke guy. He loves that one of his sayings was, sophisticated people have retirement plans, rednecks buy lottery tickets. So yeah, don't rely on buying lottery tickets to pay your retirement, or even, I guess, I'm going to inherit some money when my parents pass. Well, don't count on that either. So it's just, very important that you really have another plan. Don't rely just on Social Security.
Okay. All right, then let's go to number 5 on the common retirement planning mistakes.
This is a biggie. Healthcare costs, a lot of people overlook. So, good. We have Medicare. We have supplemental policies that we can get. And those are great. But what it does not cover is the long-term care expenses. So whether it needing in-home care, in a facility, Medicare, nor your health insurance is going to cover those costs. So it's gone through the roof. It's become astronomical, and people just really may not be aware of in our area here in Central Florida, the going cost for a semi-private room and skilled nursing facility is pushing $9,000 a month. For assisted living, the average is half that, about 4,500 to 5,000 a month. But if you haven't planned well for that, how are you going to meet those expenses on top of everything else?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't like, this might be a little edgy, but I like to say you can always tell who's been swimming naked when the tide goes out. But it's true, because if you haven't planned and this happens, and the most common excuses I hear for people are, I'm just going to jump off a cliff. My kids will take care of me. No, that's
Right.
not something you're going to want to plan on. Do you really want your son changing your diaper when you're 89? So,
Man.
we don't want to plan on that.
No.
So the real excuse for most people were, well, I don't like these old use it or lose it policies. You pay premiums. And I've had people that we knew that had that happen. They never used it. They threw all that money into that policy and never got it back. But they have these newer generation long-term care policies that actually have the benefit grow the daily benefit for coverage can actually grow over time with market-like upside potential capped at certain percentages with no downside risk. And they have a residual death benefit if you never use the long-term care more than what you put into the policy. Those policies can typically get up to 3 to 4 times leverage of the money for long-term care expenses. And when it comes out for the long-term care expense, it's all tax-free. So
And,
there's some really great policies out there that people need to be aware of.
and I guess then this is a discussion you should have with your financial advisor. Is that
Of
your
course.
financial advisor should be up to date on these types of programs?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, sometimes advisors very familiar with these, some are not. So definitely want to ask and see, what are the options? What are the different types of policies that are out there? There's some really great varieties that are out there these days, much better than what we had 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. So definitely worth making sure you have a plan for that, because that could derail any retirement plan you set up if that wasn't
Sure.
properly planned for.
Okay. Yeah. That's great information. All right. We're continuing. We're now up to number 4 on the common retirement planning mistakes. And go ahead.
We already touched on this a little bit before, but ignoring inflation. So, the impact of inflation for your retirement expenses, you definitely have to keep, again, growing assets. They're going to keep up with inflation. If it's averaging 3 or 3.5% a year, not only do you have to get a return that exceeds that as you save for retirement, but also when you're taking income. So that, again, if you're taking 4.5% out of your portfolio and you don't have any growth on top of that, well, you're not going to have an increasing income to keep up with the cost of inflation. So that's a biggie. People make sure to plan for it.
Okay. Now let's move on to number 3 on our common retirement planning mistakes.
All right. So number 3 is not having a coordinated and intentional retirement plan in place. So if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. You need to set clear retirement goals and create a financial plan to achieve them. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier, on the 4%, kind of a study that's been going on for years, 4% distribution rate. So if I want to have $40,000 of income in retirement, guess what I'd need to have? About $1 million portfolio of savings and investments. If I think I'm going to need 80,000, I'm probably going to need to have up to $2 million in saved assets. So be thinking about, what do you plan to spend? So the goal is not what I think I'm going to get, but what do I realistically, what kind of lifestyle do I want to maintain? Don't assume that I'm going to be able to live on 50% of what I made when I was working. That would be a big mistake. So you want to make sure that you factor in travel, healthcare, hobbies, toys, helping grandkids, things like that. Those are all the normal expenses. And then how will the impact of inflation affect that income? What kind of return on my investments will I need? So sometimes people get some false security by going on to their company's 401k side. You can do a quick little estimator for retirement, but sometimes those can give a false sense of security, not really addressing all the different issues. And it might be more important to really get with a professional advisor that really knows how to crunch the numbers, really knows all these issues, and making sure that all those things, all those assumptions about longevity, inflation, rates of return are all factored in. There's some sophisticated tools out there that really give a lot, with something we call Monte Carlo simulation that factors in all the variability of the market returns. We know we're not going to get a 6.5% return every year. It might be 12 one year, to another, negative 13. So it's going to vary. So that has to be factored into those assumptions for retirement calculations.
So it's good to know some, I guess, money that you're spending, that you're definitely going to be spending, have that set. As we talked about earlier, your health, you never know what's going to happen with your health. And that's when you sort of have to estimate. I hate to use the word guess, but in a way you are guessing when you're trying to prepare for your health. But as far as expenses, as far as food, your transportation, things like that you can control. There are some things that you can control and things you can't control. And it's good I would say it's good to make sure you're on top of everything you can control. And that will give you a little more leeway with things that you can't control.
That's exactly right. Good. Well said.
Okay. All right. A lot of people who know me would be very surprised by that comment or that statement. All right. We are up to the number one topic or common retirement planning mistakes: not saving enough.
Well, not saving enough is really one of the biggies. So don't wait until your 50s or 60s. Start saving as early as possible. 401k plans are the simplest way to do it. You can start matching, putting contributions in pre-tax into a retirement plan. It grows tax deferred. You reduce your taxable income by the amount that you put in. Pre-tax contributions are really one of the best ways because most companies will match to some degree what you're putting in, or sometimes they even put it in whether or not you're even putting money in. So it doesn't make sense to not do it at all. Make sure that you're putting in a substantial amount, not just, I'm going to put in 2%, something like that. In this year, in 2024, you're allowed to put up to $30,500 pre-tax if you're over 50 years old into a 401k. That would be reducing your taxable income by $30,500. So not only are you saving on taxes, but you're also letting your money grow, compounding tax deferred, which really makes a big difference. Don't forget about the Roth IRA, that you also need to build an after-tax pool of money, meaning when I retire, when it comes out of this bucket of money, it's not taxable like a pre-tax contribution plan that's pre-tax. So the Roth IRAs and any after-tax savings are a phenomenal way to continue to build two pools of money, a pre-tax and an after-tax. If you're a business owner, there are even more ways to save taxes and put away for retirement because there's all kinds of small business retirement plan options that you can choose from that are really phenomenal ways to save in taxes and really diversify away from just all of your money being in your business.
Okay, that's interesting, and it hit home because I'm looking to do more on my own as far as work is concerned, and so I should sit down with my financial advisor and put together a plan as far as, okay, I'm doing this on my own. I'm not working for a company, so I need to then have a plan how much they're going to take out, or he wants to take out on a quarterly basis instead of a yearly basis.
Well, you can make monthly deposits however you want to. It's just you have an annual maximum that you can contribute based on your income. There's several different types of small business retirement plans that are definitely worth a closer look because, again, it gives you a lot of flexibility. You can put a lot more away even than if you were a W-2 wage employee. So self-employed people have a lot more flexibility, a lot more options, and a lot more that they can do as far as pre-tax savings and tax reduction strategies using those.
Okay. All right. Well, we've gone through the top 10. That's a lot. There's a lot there to really absorb. And as we were talking a little bit before, these are just the top 10 common mistakes. This is not other mistakes that you could make. Do you think that this overall, as a society, we're not doing a really good job of preparing young people for retirement? And that's something that probably should be looked at a little bit harder than we do.
Well, absolutely. I think some states and some municipalities are requiring some credits in high school for basic financial management concepts about debt and budgeting and so forth. I think that's a great start because most of the time it just does not get taught at home. Parents
Yeah.
aren't really versed on all these topics, so they're not going to be able to really convey those on to the next generation. I think it ought to be a college requirement for definite finance basics of investing and taxation and insurance issues and retirement. And those things are just personal life skills that need to be learned. Unfortunately, most people don't get it. They have to figure it out by default, as we talked about, and
Yeah.
hope for the best. So that's why it's so important to get professional advice and get people that really do this for a living and are experts at what they know and how they can help our clients. So absolutely, you need to get serious about making smart choices with their money. That's my hope from this podcast.
Okay. Very good. All right, Tom, how can people contact you?
Well, all they need to do is go to our website at fleishelfinancial.com. That's Fleishel financial.com. There's also on our homepage now a link directly to our podcasts under the resources tab. And there's also an opportunity for people to click on our book that we just have coming out, Clarity and Confidence for Life. And it has a QR code to take them directly to Amazon to order their copy.
All right. That sounds good. Good luck with that, Tom. And most importantly, thank you for listening to the Clarity and Confidence for Life podcast. We ask you to share this podcast, rate it, and leave you a review because this actually helps others find the show. Again, thank you for listening. And for everyone at Clarity and Confidence for Life, I'm RJ Malik, and we look forward to you joining us for the next podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Clarity and Confidence for Life podcast. Click the subscribe button to be notified of new episodes when they become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the hosts and/or guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Raymond James. This content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional financial advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service providers with any questions you may have regarding your individual situation. Securities are offered through Raymond James Financial Services Incorporated, member FINRA, and SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors Incorporated. Fleishel Financial Associates is not a broker-dealer and is independent of Raymond James Financial Services.